Really sort of follow on from the earlier answers you were making about Britain and the North East being in the forefront of the low carbon economy and green products and all that. Because what's actually happening up here, despite what you're saying, is actually the production of the highest carbon products. There's a rash of open cast applications going right through the northeast of England. There's plans for a new coal-fired power station at Blythe. There's the existing coal-fired power station at Alcan, which you mentioned. Interested in CCS? It's the fourth largest CO2 emitter in the northeast of England. The government is continuing and has pronounced that it wants to continue to invest and to allow coal-fired power stations at the same time that it claims that it wants to be reducing carbon emissions. And the two things don't add up. Climate change is not about it getting a bit warmer for us here, it's about people in the third world dying.
I know you feel strongly about this. Ed Miliband has announced a new policy for dealing with coal-fired power stations of the future by requiring them to have the facility to do carbon capture and storage. And that will be the basis on which future applications for coal-fired power stations will be accepted or refused. Now look, the problem we've got in our country is we don't want to be dependent on oil and gas from unstable parts of the world. And the danger for us is as North Sea oil and gas runs out, then more and more of our energy would be imported from other countries, and sometimes from countries where they have regimes that we don't want to be dependent upon. So what we're trying to do is make a more balanced supply of energy so that we can have the energy we need for the future, not be dependent on oil, and make advances in tackling climate change. Now, there you are. So we are investing in nuclear. Some people may disagree with that, but I think it's the right thing to do. And as long as it's safe and secure, and we deal with the decommissioning of nuclear power stations, that is part of our fuel. Then we're investing in renewables. And so I mentioned wind and wave power. There's also solar power. And also the carbon capture and clean coal are very much part of a strategy for having clean technologies, energy efficient for the future. So we want a balanced energy policy, neither too dependent on oil and gas, nor too dependent on nuclear or on coal. And that's what we're doing over the course of the next few years.
If you'd like to go ahead first, please.
Thank you. Malcolm Reed. My only vested interest is being a parent. You project yourself as being a very moral man. Isn't it the case that we should not be using energy that our children pay for? Doesn't that rule out nuclear power and coal power? Now we know what damage it causes. Surely you should be having confidence in your own commitments to meet a high proportion of our energy from renewables, sufficient to meet the gap of closing power stations. Because if you divert into all these different things and don't put your heart into a consistent program, we won't get there.
Right. Again, renewables, energy a big issue.
Well, I think the fact it's a big issue is a very good thing. And even if we disagree about some of our conclusions, this is a debate that will go on, and rightly so, about what's the best way to get a sustainable future where we don't run out of energy, but actually use our energy most effectively. I think the problem about the position that you put forward is that only 1% of our energy at the moment comes from renewables. And so to move to, 50%, 60%, 70% over the course of a year or two is not possible. We've set a goal.
But 15% is the European target, which we've signed up to, haven't we, by 2020?
Yeah, but we're 1% at the moment. Sure. And we want to get to 15% by 2020. Now, 70% of our energy comes from oil and gas at the moment. 10% comes from nuclear. Now, to eliminate these sources, or some of these sources, would mean that we would be left short of the energy. What we've got to do is balance the cost of energy, because you cannot have consumers paying more and more for the gas and electricity bills. We've got to balance the cost of energy with the security of energy supply, so we're not reliant on other countries, with our targets for climate change. And to balance these off, I think, is possible by increasing the amount of renewables, by a small share of our energy being nuclear, and by reducing our dependence on oil and gas.